Hello everyone, welcome to another video from Fantasy Football Scouts. Az and Sam here. It's going to be a bit of an interactive one this time. So get your questions in, any questions you've got about any of the prices. We're going to do a bit of a recap over what's been going on. The carnage that has been the 21-22 price releases from every club. Twitter's going crazy. How are you feeling, Sam? Are you ready for the next season?
Oh, yeah.
I know,
think
that's how
so.
I feel.
I'm excited about it now, though, aren't you? Like, suddenly these prices kind of make you go, oh, if I have this one, I probably can't have this one. But there's a lot of nice cheap options in there as well. So kind of don't feel as scared as I did this time last year. Like, this time last year when the prices came out, I remember thinking, I just can't see how I can make it work. But this year, there's enough, I think, in that lower price point that you can make it work.
We've got enough time to prep with 2 months until the start of the season. So yeah, we should have enough time to make sure we've got some good teams. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we're gonna recap, talk through all the different teams. I mean, Chris did a 7-hour stream on Scout yesterday. We can't promise that level of commitment to things. We'll try and wrap this up in half an hour or 45 minutes or so. I think I couldn't believe it. I was watching it just live all day, 7 hours. I was like, wow. But yeah, I know. But we'll hopefully we'll even get some coming in as we talk. We've just had Brentford as well, so I've stuck those in quickly, so we talk about those. But yeah, let's start. Let's just go through, because I mean, I haven't really. I've got to be honest. Yesterday I was a bit all over the place. I was a little bit hungover. It's Father's Day as well, so I wasn't really kind of fully in the game. So it's been this morning that I've been kind of playing catch up a little bit. Were you on all day yesterday, kind of watching them come in live, or were you a bit more kind of separated?
I've got to admit that I did become a bit addicted to it by the end of the day. Like, at the beginning of the day, I was like, well, this is exciting, an Arsenal team release. Okay, fair enough. And then as the day went on, and it was sort of like every 40 minutes or so, it was kind of like, oh my goodness. So it would get to like 40 minutes had passed and I'd be like, Lee, have we had any more yet? And he'd be like, I don't know, have a look. So yeah, it was pretty much all day in the end, just watching what was happening.
It's an interesting way of them doing it, wasn't it? With the Premier League teams actually tweeting out the prices. I mean, some of them tweeted out 4 players, some tweeted out full price lists. It was, you never really knew who was going to be next and what you were going to get. I think they were started off kind of almost alphabetical, and then that kind of went out the window because some teams didn't do it. I don't know. It was pretty exciting. So on the screen, I've just got the fixtures. So this is a screen that I'll kind of come back to as we talk. So as we talk through the teams, you can see kind of how good the options are kind of as we start the season. Let's just start at the top. So Arsenal came in, were the first team to come in. I think it's actually all 4 of these I thought were quite interesting. Aubameyang back to a forward at 10. Smith Rowe, he was 4.5 last year, did pretty well, up to 5.5. Pepe, amazing end to the season, 7.5. And Gabriel's kept his price at 5. Interested in any of these? I'm kind of interested in all of them in different ways.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think, when these ones first came out, it was a bit like, well, there's not a huge amount of difference in the majority of them to what they were towards the back end of last season. There haven't been huge price jumps with these players, so that's always nice. Aubameyang took a massive drop, and that's for me really interesting. And the fact that he's now moved back into a forward position, I can't work out whether that makes him more or less attractive as an FPL option, because obviously when he was at the kind of ridiculous end of the spectrum in the midfield last year, competing alongside the likes of Bruno and Salah, he kind of become a bit of a non-event, didn't he? Particularly after those first couple of game weeks. So nice.
I honestly thought he was going to be on all. You do those like spreadsheets, top point scorer, all that. I had him down as top point scorer last year. I thought Aubameyang as a midfielder, even at 12, I thought he was going to absolutely smash it.
Yeah,
didn't.
It's weird though, isn't it? Because it just never came to fruition. And I think, I look at him this season and I think 10 million is an interesting price point because it's not unaffordable. Like it's a relatively nice price point for him. But then we also had a bit later, obviously, the team release from Spurs with Kane's price on it. And you look at that and you think, well, you're pretty much going to have to choose, aren't you? You're never going to be able to afford Aubameyang and Kane if you want to also go with the likes of Bruno, who we've now seen his price this morning, Salah, whose price we got yesterday. Yep. So it's going to be tough. And I think, therefore, Aubameyang will have quite low ownership at the start of the season.
Yeah, and so the fixtures for Arsenal, I think they're about mid-table I mean, they start with a promoted teams. They start with Brentford in the first game, then they go straight into Chelsea and City, which obviously isn't ideal. But then Norwich and Burnley. So yeah, it's a bit of a... If they had kind of 2 easier games to start with, I think he'd be quite a nice punt. I mean, he's a decent punt for the first game if you were planning on switching him out afterwards. But Chelsea City is obviously tough, and we don't really know what his role is going to be in the team. We never really know if Aubameyang is going to be up front, is going to be back in midfield on the left.
Yeah, exactly. I think Smith Rowe's interesting because he's at a nice price point, although a bit more expensive than he was last year, probably because he was a bit too cheap last year, to be honest. So the fact that he's taken a million up actually feels about right, really. And I think he could be a really nice... He's one of those players that I would kind of bracket in that 4.5 to 5.5, really nice enabler bracket. The sort of young kid that's got huge drive and motivation to perform. If he's consistently starting, then at that price point could be a really nice pick.
I like him, and Odegaard's left as well. He was on loan, so he's a big kind of creative spark that they've lost. They're going to be relying more on Smith Rowe, I think, this season. Potentially massive potential. Arteta seemingly loves him. I think he could be an absolute steal at that price. I'm half tempted actually to start with him for that Brentford game and then bench him for the next 2. I think it was Jeff that said 5.5. I mean, Soucek last year at 5 was kind of perfect. 5.5 for a kind of a fifth midfielder feels a little bit on the pricey side, but I do think he could be. I do think he could be a good option. I mean, Pepe as well. Pepe at 7.5. I thought he was going to see his price upped based on what he did at the end of last season. He's a bit of a punt again. He always is, but can get some big returns.
And the other thing we should say about Arsenal, of course, is no European football this year. So it is going to be full focus on the Premier League. We haven't got any kind of worries about rotation risks, anything like that. So I think the Arsenal players, if they can find their form and if we can start to see a return to a bit more what we're used to with Arsenal, then these guys could be really nice picks. Pepe did finish the season really well. And I think 7.5 is quite fair.
Yeah, so do I. I think he has the... I mean, when he first came to the Premier League, he was 9.5, wasn't he? He's like proper premium end. He hasn't really delivered. I think he's starting to get more trust now from Arteta. I mean, Willian's been such a huge disappointment for them. And with it depends on the signings they make, but I do think Pepe could be a factor. And last, I mean, Gabriel at 5. I mean, again, last season Arsenal were massively tipped to be a strong defensive team. Arteta looked like he'd kind of got them sorted in the big games, particularly towards the start of the season. They were doing well. I think he's another interesting one. As well, it's just those two out of 3 games against kind of top sides.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? Because I think the 5 million defenders are going to be the ones that you need to get right early on in the season, because you're likely to want some other premium defenders in there. So if you can get your 5 million defenders right, then you could be onto a really nice start. And I do worry a little about Arsenal's ability to keep clean sheets over those first 3 game weeks.
I agree. So what I'll do is we'll just go through what's on the screen, and then I'll take some questions from the chat, and then we'll talk through those. Then we move. So if you try and make your questions to do with what we're talking about, it just saves us having to jump around like lunatics as we talk through. So people asking about Kane and stuff, we'll come on to Spurs like later on in the video. But for now, if you've got questions about Arsenal or just general questions for us, I mean, one person asked if we're dating. Jeremy Lawless says we're dating.
Are we? Oh yes.
No,
shall I tell my husband?
Yeah, unfortunately, Sam's married, so I don't think that's gonna happen. Unless I get Lee out of the picture. That's the next stage. But
it's the stage in your master plan.
Yeah, that's it. But
get me on a Q&A and then get rid of the husband.
That's the plan. Yeah, but we're dating in the FPL Q&A sense, because we'll be doing these videos next season as well. So every week, Sam and I will be chatting through questions and things in a similar format to this. Try and make it interactive. So yeah, ask away. Less questions about my dating life would be appreciated, because there isn't much of one at the moment. But so any other questions? Yeah, so actually Andrew Bassett asked a question about Tierney and Saka. Actually, not really a question, just says the two he's interested in. So what prices do you expect them to come in at? I imagine Tierney's going to be 5.5, like Andrew says, a bit more expensive than Gabriel. Saka, I think he says 6.5. That sounds about right to me as well. Would you be interested in those at that price?
Yeah, I mean, I think Saka's worth a little bit more over Smith Rowe. If he was 6, I'd be interested. The fact that Rafinha's 6.5 means I'm not sure I want to spend 6.5 on Saka when I could have Rafinha. But if he's 6, that would be quite a nice place to be. I think.
It would. I mean, his underlying numbers at certain points in the season, he was right up there with some of the top players. He's a player who I really think can break out at some point. It's just, will it be Arsenal?
Well, exactly.
Sorry, Arsenal fans.
And I think Tierney's an interesting one. If he can stay fit, because we didn't have consistency with him across the whole season last year in terms of his fitness and availability. So if he can stay fit over the course of this season, then he could be a good pick. But again, he's going to be, if he goes in at 5.5, he's going to be competing with the Manchester United defenders. And again, I think you'd struggle to pick an Arsenal defender over one of those guys.
Yeah, I think so. And also, you never really know where Tierney's going to play. Sometimes he drops into the back three, and that's not as attractive. When he plays on the left, it was like a wing back or something. It's incredible. But it seems to be kind of, he's either injured, not playing in the right position, or he's playing there and doing well. So you've always got that kind of risk element to him. But yeah, I do like him. Any other questions? Yeah, unofficial tribe says Saka could be 7 mil. Would they push him up to that? That would be quite a hefty increase. Was he 5.5 at the start of the season?
Yeah, I can't see him being that close to Pepe. I do think that I think if he was 1 million less, that probably makes sense. I don't think he'll get very high ownership if he gets to 7 million. I suspect that would just price people out the game with him.
Yep. Matthew Kent says he'll date me. Thanks very much, mate.
There you go.
Not that desperate yet. So Brentford. So got to be honest, don't know a huge amount of Brentford. So what I did was I cheated. We've had 4 price reveals so far. No, we've had the full list. These are the 4 they originally tweeted. So Raya, the goalkeeper, Pinnock, Mabumo. There's no way that's pronounced right. Apologies. And Tony. So what I did was just I just grabbed the lineup from their last game, the playoff final. So they had Raya in goal, Dalsgaard, Jansen, Pinnock. So Pinnock obviously is a centre back, plays in the 3. Raya's the goalkeeper, and then Roroslev, Jensen, Janelt, Marcondes, Canos. I'm just going for it. Mbembo and Tony. So oh God, I really am struggling with do you know Mbuemo? I don't know what nationality he is, so I can't even try and give it the right tang. So he plays up front with Tony as well. So looking at the full price list, you've got Raya there at 4.5. You've got players like Janssen there at 4.5. So typical, newly promoted side. All the defenders and goalkeeper coming in at 4.5. I mean, Mbuemo, who I can't pronounce, is a mid on this at 5.5. I don't know if there's any Brentford fans in the chat, but it's interesting that the lineup seemed to have him playing kind of up front with Tony. So he's obviously plays as quite an advanced attacking midfielder. So could be someone that potentially is a factor, but with Smith Rowe there at 5.5 as well. Not sure we're going to go there. But really, we can talk about all these guys and pretend we know them. It's all about Tony, right? Ivan Tony, 6.5. He's a lock. I mean, just going back to the fixtures, they've got a good run. I mean, Arsenal, Palace, Villa, Brighton, Wolves. It's about as good as you could have hoped for with him. Is he straight in your team?
I think so. I think, with players like Bamford and Watkins getting huge price rises for next season, you're looking for that value pick that we had in those guys last season. And Tony seems to be the obvious choice. I think at the price he makes a really nice option as either a second or a third striker. If you're going to go with Kane, which a lot of managers probably are going to go with Kane, then to have somebody in that 6.5 bracket who is guaranteed goals and starts you would expect and has a nice start to the season, I think Tony is going to be a very, very popular pick across the FPL community.
Choo-choo! It's the Ivan Tony train. Everyone's getting on board. He was always going to be highly owned. And I think when the fixtures list came out, it was kind of like, oh, he's going to be in everyone's team. And then his price dropped at 6.5 and it was like, yeah, okay, he's definitely going to be there. It screams either really sensible investment or this is going to be a disaster.
Yeah, it could go either way, I guess. It could be a bit like Pookie Party from a couple of seasons ago. But I think he will have a good season. I think he is one of those players that he's shown his talent multiple times, obviously in the Championship last season in particular. So I think Brentford will come up without any kind of they'll just go for it. I can't see them coming up and being conservative in their play. So I think he will be a really, really popular pick early on this season.
Just don't forget Neil Maupay got 23 goals in the Championship and he is useless. So I'm just trying to remind people he was also at Brentford. He came up, he did all right for a bit and then he was terrible. I think Tony is is a better striker than Maupay in a lot of ways. So I do expect him to do well, but never forget Neil Maupay. Speaking of Neil Maupay, we can move on to Brighton now. So we've only had 4 from Brighton so far. So Sanchez at 4.5. That's the one that's got everyone talking.
Oh, 100%.
I think everyone's been looking at ways to tap into the Brighton defence for those first fixtures, which are Burnley, Watford, Everton, Brentford, Leicester. It's a really good sort of run. Brighton, obviously amazing defensive numbers last season. I think a lot of people expected Sanchez to be 5. I'm really surprised he's not, to be honest.
I was delighted when this one dropped because, it normally it's a straight choice, isn't it, between going for rotating 4.5s or going for a slightly premium keeper and maybe, going with somebody like Martinez, who we now know we've had his price this morning. But actually, you look at Sanchez and you look at Brighton's first 8 fixtures of the season, and I think it's conceivable to go with him and a 4.0, which is it's unfathomable to do that or to think of that this early on in the season. But I do think that this is such incredible value that Sanchez is offering. Is that
unfathomable? I mean, I would say there's been one season in the last 7 or 8 years when I haven't started with a 4.5 and a 4.0. I always go as cheap as I can in defence. I think the only kind of time I didn't was I went for Pickford, I think, one year when Everton had a similar run.
Why?
Well, that's a very good question. They had a similar run of fixtures to what they've got now. It was just all blue. Every game was blue. And I was like, Pickford's obviously going to do well in this. There was no other 4.5, so I went for Pickford. I think they conceded in just about every game until I wildcarded, and then they kept a clean sheet like away at Arsenal or something. It's just one of those ones. It's always the way it goes. Last season, I started with Matt Ryan, who a lot of people did as well.
I did.
I thought he'd be good value. He wasn't. That's the risk that you get with a 4.5 goalkeeper, is if you don't get it right, and there's another 4.5 that does well, sometimes you can lose value on them and you can't make the switch over as easy. You don't want to be using transfers on a goalkeeper, all that kind of stuff. So the rotating element has always stressed me out a bit because I never like to predict who's going to keep the clean sheet.
See, I really like a rotating keeper, and that's normally my strategy. I normally start the season with 2 4.5s. And last season, I think it was McCarthy and Ryan I went with, if I remember rightly. And neither of them ended up being that great pick. But I think this season we can be fairly confident that Sanchez is the number 1 at Brighton, and so he will be one of them. And then it's just a case for me of I'll be leaving the last keeper spot till the very end probably, and seeing whether if I've got an extra 0.5 that I can spend on then I'll go rotating pairs, because I like the opportunity to switch in and switch out, and it just covers you if somebody picks up a knock or what have you. It means there's no need for early transfers. And I think at 4.5s, we've got Gaeta at Crystal Palace as well in that bracket, who again, not necessarily the best keeper in the world, but in terms of clean sheets. But let's see what happens with Palace with the new manager.
I was going to say harsh to Guaita, not the best keeper.
Well, not for him, not to him personally, but in terms of that, we didn't see a lot from Palace last season in terms of clean sheet potential, let's say. But then things are different this season. We've got new manager incoming, whoever that might be. So there's already potential for 2 first choice 4.5s that won't provide any real rotation risk, but they just cover each other out nicely.
Breaking news, the Chelsea prices have just come out. So
these are the ones we've all been waiting for.
Absolutely. If someone could post those in the chat, that would be great.
Well, Werner's taken a big hit if he's down at 9 million.
Is he down at 9? Yeah. If someone could post those in the chat, we'll cover that. It's just a bit hard for me to add those to the stream, but we'll definitely talk about them when we do. Just a final thought on Sanchez. I think it's worth remembering that people are getting very excited. I'm not entirely convinced that we won't.
Some scepticism coming.
Well, I think we'll sign a new goalkeeper. I think we always like to have some rotation options. Well, not rotation options, but we like to have a couple of decent goalkeepers. We've always bought like the likes of like good goalkeepers. When we bought Jason Steele, for example, we had Button. We had a few like fairly decent goalkeepers. We didn't tend to rotate them very much, but we like to have a few. Ryan, I don't know what's going to happen with Ryan. I mean, if Ryan,
I was going to say, do we know?
Well, I assume he's going to be sold, but if he's not sold, he was our player of the season almost. I think like at least 1 year, maybe even 2 years in a row. It was only last year he had a really, really bad dip in form, kind of got shipped out to Arsenal. I wonder if he's going to come back and try and fight for the gloves again, which would make it a bit more problematic with Sanchez. I think there will be a number one, so I don't think you have to worry about what we saw at the end of last season, switching them in and out and all that. But yeah, I do think we need to keep an eye on what Brighton do in the transfer market, because I'm not entirely convinced Sanchez will start as number one, even though he had a good end of the season.
As you're just breaking FPL hearts.
I know.
That statement.
I know. But
for me, the other one on that list is Basuma, because I started last season with Basuma, and to be honest, he is one of those players that I really like owning, because at 4.5 million, he's the perfect, in my view anyway, fifth midfielder. How often do you actually want them to play? Not very, usually, depending upon the strategy that you take, particularly with the way that we ended up with really good forwards last season. So Basuma was exactly the sort of player I needed. He would play every week, would get a couple of points here or there, hit a worldie once in a while, but not very often. But tick over a couple of points so that if you ever needed someone to come off the bench, he was there, but also wasn't taking up loads of your budget sat on your bench. So I think I'm quite likely to end up with Basuma in my lineup again this season. I can see him coming in. There is slight concerns I have about if he moves to another club, because that's obviously been hinted at. And then it depends what other club it is, because, sorry, but I'm not likely to own 3 Brighton players over the course of the season, or want to own lots of Brighton players over the course of the season. So I'm not so worried about Basuma taking up a spot. But if he goes to Liverpool or, one of the really big hitting clubs, then I might have a struggle to own him. But at Brighton at 4.5, I just think he's really, really great value, and is a really, really great enabler.
Wow, I have never heard such a passionate kind of speech
about
Basuma from an FPL. I mean, he was one of the stars of my season last year. It tells you a lot about my season. But one week I played him because I had no other options, and he scored a screamer from outside the box.
It was a beauty, that goal. I was on my bench at the time.
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, a player like that, a 4.5 option just from a team like Brighton, who you're not going to invest in heavily. The issue is it might catch people out if you start with him and then he does switch to Liverpool, and then that affects you down the line of having to transfer.
It is the worry. It's definitely a worry, that.
Yeah. Trossard as well is there, 6.5. I think, they've kind of just kept his price sort of where it was before. Gross is there at 6. I still don't think there's anything to get too excited about with those two. Trossard, he's one of those players, I think he's always going to be on the cusp of greatness, but never will be a real factor in our season. I just don't see reliable, consistent returns from him. You just got to hit the odd 15-point haul against Newcastle, like I did.
Where do you think they'll price Lamptey?
I think Lamptey. Well, the Brighton defence is really interesting, because with Sanchez at 4.5, I'd wonder.
You expect the others to be around.
I wonder what they're going to do. I mean, Dunk could conceivably move up to 5.5 if they wanted to, which would make him completely a non-option. But I mean, he was 5 this season. He had a decent season again, scored quite a few goals. He could be put into that kind of Scott Dan bracket when he did that. I think more realistically, though, we're going to see most of them at 5. I think Lamptey's an interesting one. Lamptey could come in at 4.5 again, given that he missed most of last season.
Most stuff, yeah.
And if he does, then I think he's a great option if he's fit. And then it gives you the choice of, do I want to go with 2 Brighton defenders? Do I want to go with Sanchez and Lamptey as well? That could make things quite interesting, I think, if he is 4.5. Might put someone like Guaita or Raya more into consideration for the goalkeeper spot.
Unless Lamptey gets him either way.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
Wants to come to Spurs, right?
Stop selling all our players. Lamptey, Basuma. Got no one left.
Lose them all.
No
you
one
won't
left.
lose them all. But I think Brighton could be a really nice team this season. The price points are really nice. In the ones that we've seen so far, there's some really nice prices there. And I think if we continue to see that across the rest of the side, from an FPL perspective, we know how solid you can be defensively when you're all fully fit and firing. So particularly looking at the defence, I think Brighton could be some nice FPL picks there.
Hopefully make a change. So let's just talk about Chelsea quickly. So Chelsea have released 4 player prices. I hate them all, to be honest. Not getting excited. Mendy at 6, that seems a hell of a lot for him. Azpilicueta at 6 as well. Kante at 5, no one's going to go there. And then Werner at 9. So 9 are a bit of a drop, but doesn't strike me as a 9 million option. I mean,
they're intriguing them, aren't they? Because, where are they going to put Ziyech and Havertz and Pulisic if they've got Werner at 9? I think they'll be quite bunched, I should have thought. Because
I think they'll keep them. I think they'll keep them about where they were last season. I can't see Havertz moving from 8-5. I think he could. I think he could conceivably have gone down to 8, but then he had a pretty decent run at the end of the season.
He did, yeah.
So I think they'll keep him at 8-5.
I mean, those defensive prices aren't making me want to get a Chelsea defender though. They're a lot of money.
It's quite. I mean, to be fair, they're quite clever. I mean, the really interesting ones I think are the ones they haven't even given us, which are Chilwell and James.
Yeah,
they're the one.
Yeah.
I think Chilwell's 6-5 almost certainly. If they're playing,
he's going to have to be.
They're going to have to be. If they've got Azpilicueta at 6, they're going to have to make Chilwell 6-5.
Yeah, I think so. I can't see otherwise. I mean, and it sort of makes sense to put him up alongside Robertson. It would make sense for him to be there, and then you've got some really big choices to make. I think. Yeah, I mean, for me, Chelsea are the big team that I'll be looking to invest in this year that I didn't really own anyone from last season for huge chunks of time, because going forward it was really tough picking a Chelsea player. Mount, Havertz, Ziyech, Pulisic, they're probably the ones that are kind of most interesting over Werner.
You just never know who's going to play. That's the problem.
And that's the trouble.
I mean, Mount, what about Mount? How much do you reckon Mount's going to come in at? 7-5? Could they push him up to 8? Be a lot.
I wouldn't be surprised if you think that Pepe is 7-5, I wouldn't be surprised to see Mount at 8. I wouldn't be surprised. I think that Chelsea side, they're the sort of team that they're going to want you to choose, aren't they? You're going to not be able to have all of these guys. You have to make some tough choices. So I wouldn't be surprised to see all of those Chelsea boys end up between 8 and 9 million, just so that you've got to make the picks.
Yeah, I agree. It would be a lot. I mean, yes, couple of people in the chat. So Benjo says Mount is 7-5 and Havertz is 8. I'm not sure if that's a guess or whether he's seen that somewhere. I haven't seen other people talking about that, but I mean, Mount is 7-5 or Havertz 8 would be quite interesting. I think if Havertz is 8-5, I think I probably would go for Mount if he was 7-5.
Yeah, I would.
I mean, his chances created stats, Mount, were brilliant, but he was poor for England the other day, so that kind of puts me off a little bit, but that's recency bias, I think. Benjo mentions Haaland, Chelsea kind of sniffing around for a striker. I think they need one. I don't think Werner is seen as that long-term solution up top when maybe he was under Lampard. Are they going to move him out to the left, which means Pulisic will barely play? I'm not sure they will.
It's tough, isn't it?
I don't know what's going to happen with Werner.
Well, I don't think he's an FPL asset, even at 9 million. I think it's a more interesting price, but I won't be investing. I think, there's going to be other forward options. We've already talked about Tony. We've not talked about Watkins or Bamford yet, but they're cheaper options that you can kind of invest in, and I think will give you better returns over the course of the season than Werner will. I think the Chelsea midfield looks to be the point that I'm most interested in, and defensively I would like a Chelsea defender, because I do think that they will be rock solid this year. But at that price, you're going to be forced to choose probably between a Liverpool one and a Chelsea one, or you're going to have to weaken your midfield slightly and not have one of those big hitters in order to have both of them.
I think we could see James at 6, because I just think, I know he was like, Chilwell was 6.5 to me. I think he's won that place now. Alonso's came in for a bit, now he's out. James, we don't know whether he's going to be at centre back. He was playing there for a bit on the right. He was kind of rotated a bit with Hudson-Odoi. I think Azpilicueta's overpriced at 6. I think we should have seen him at 5.5. James at 6 and then Chilwell at 6.5. That's how I would have done it, but I'm not in charge. But that would have just given you, go for the cheaper one, Azpilicueta, but not necessarily nailed on. James, the kind of middle one, bit of rotation, then Chilwell. Anyway, that hasn't happened. So yeah, we'll see what James and Chilwell come in. I think they're coming at 6.5. That'd be my guess. But yeah, we'll see. Any more questions about Chelsea? El Fozzie's there. Chris James can't stay away from the streams. 7 hours wasn't enough for him. He says the predictors Mount and Pulisic at 8, Havertz 8.5, and Ziyech dropping down to 7.5. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, Ziyech is someone I really like, but I just can't see a consistent run for him in the side to get me excited. Right, anyway, let's move on from Chelsea. We have Brian on the screen this whole time as well. People must be sick of that. Right, Burnley, God, they've gone high with these, haven't they? Pope at 5.5, Wood at 7, Tarkowski at 5, me at 5. So they're kind of pricing them almost mid-table team. I guess they sort of are these days, but Any Burnley players interest you? Yeah.
These prices made me kind of go, oh,
I know.
really?
I know. That's what I thought.
Because I think, Pope, look, I think Pope's a fantastic goalkeeper, but at 5.5, that he'd have to be the set and forget goalkeeper at that price point, because you're not going to have two and you're not going to rotate them probably. I just don't trust the Burnley defence enough to warrant paying that on him. And then I look at Tarkowski and me at 5 and think, we've already talked about some other players that are in that price point defensively. You've only got to pay 0.5 more for the Manchester United defence, and you've got much more attacking potential through them. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about them defensively. They weren't particularly solid either last season. And then Chris Wood did have a phenomenal end to the season. So I'm not surprised to see his price increase. But I was surprised to see, I kind of did shock me to see him at a 7. I was expecting him to be around the Tony price point. I thought we might get him at 6.5, but he's a purple patch player, isn't he? He tends to go on the runs like we saw at the back end of last season, where he does really well, and then he might drop out for a little while. But I can see people picking him. I think he will be popular. Where are Burnley on the fixture ticker?
Well, they're up now. They're sort of mid to low table. They've got Brighton at home, then Liverpool, then Leeds, then Everton, then Arsenal. So I think if you're thinking of investing in their defence, they've got Liverpool, Leeds, Everton, and Arsenal, 4 of their first 5.
There's not many clean sheets there, is there?
There's
really?
not many. I don't think there's many clean sheets there. And Wood at 7. I think, like you said, there's better mid-price strikers that we're going to get. The general consensus of the chat is move on. Next.
Yeah, they're just expensive.
Yuck.
They're more expensive than They're more expensive than I was expecting. Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, we might see. Aaron Hart mentions Lowton or Taylor. They could come in at 4-5.
Which would be better.
Yeah, they
4.5.
Yeah, they do tend to price the centre backs a little bit higher because they've got the kind of aerial threat that Burnley. Well, everyone says Burnley have got like big threat from set pieces. I can't remember them scoring a goal from a set piece in about 3 years.
No.
Yeah, I think I'd definitely pick up if Leighton or Taylor are 4-5. I think they're a great option to have on your bench, because Burnley are always capable of a 1-0 at home.
That's true.
Right, let's move on from Burnley. Everyone's sick of them. Palace are next. So a couple of interesting. I mean, Palace have no squad currently because all their players are out of contract. So they've put 4 players on the screen. I think it's pretty much their entire squad list, to be honest. Zaha at 7. Guaita's there at 4-5. Mitchell's at 4-5. Benteke's at 6-5. So Mitchell's had a bit of a price increase up to 4-5. That seems fair. Van Aanholt's moved on now, so I think Mitchell is going to be kind of first choice for them. No competition there. Guaita with a price drop, I think, is interesting at 4-5, depending on who comes in, manager and replacements. And Zaha is a mid again. He was forward last year, wasn't he? Has he gone from forward to mid? Or he stays a mid?
It was the year before, wasn't it?
Zaha's one of those players. Every year he's got like a new positional classification, right? He seems to change every year. I think he was a mid. He was a mid last season.
I'm really surprised to see him more expensive than Raphinha.
Oh yeah,
really
me too.
Surprised. I wouldn't have. If you'd have said to me they're the same price, I'd have gone, yeah.
I think that's more to do with Raphinha being the most
cheaper,
underpriced player, I think, in the game that I've seen so far. Yeah. I think 7 for Zaha is probably right.
I mean, the thing is, it's priced nicely enough that people will think, it's a half of 7 million, and they might go there. But for me, it's the defence at Crystal Palace that are the most interesting. I look at Guaita's price and look at Mitchell's and think, yes, they look really nice prices. The one I'm really interested in is Nathan Ferguson. Now, I had Nathan Ferguson for a large chunk of last season because I was
He's a myth, Sam. He doesn't exist.
I think he doesn't exist, yeah. I owned him for weeks and weeks of last season on the basis that he was going to be fit, and when he was fit, he was going to be a starter and all of that good stuff. And then, of course, injury crisis after injury crisis meant he missed the entire season. But if he comes in, surely he's going to come in under Mitchell. He can't come in at the same price point as Mitchell. I wouldn't have thought. He's not played a single minute.
I think he's got to come in at 4.
So if he comes in at 4, he's one. I know I'll end up back there again.
There'd be no reason to increase his price. Palace are worse.
That's it.
Ferguson hasn't played, and interesting.
So he could be a really interesting pick, I think. If we see some actual football was being kicked by Ferguson in pre-season, then actually he could be a nice option.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think he exists. So,
but Mitchell at 4.5 if Ferguson is actually just a myth and they've just put him on the team sheet just because they don't have enough other picks, then yeah, Mitchell at 4.5, he's going to be really highly owned in the FPL community because at that price for a starter, you're absolutely going there, 100%.
Be interesting to know who Palace appoint, because they had the De Boer experiment, which was a complete disaster.
Yeah,
They kind of made the statement, we want to play attacking football, possession football. That lasted about 3-4 weeks, and they were like, no, actually, let's just get Roy Hodgson and and defend really deep and frustrate again. So I wonder if they're going to try something a bit new and get someone a bit more expansive, or whether they're going to just stick with the formula that's worked with Hodgson and just try and stay up. So yeah, I mean, because Nuno was tipped to go, wasn't he, for ages?
Yeah, I think he's still being linked with them, but who knows? They seem to be, well, the manager circus just rolls on at all of these clubs trying to appoint somebody. So we'll see what happens with Palace, but the prices are certainly interesting enough that there's definitely going to be picks that you can go to. I think it's going to be the defenders more than it is the attackers, though.
I mean, if Nuno does go and they stick to 3 at the back, then maybe Mitchell at wing back. Could that be a that could
Which
be a
would be
thing?
nice, wouldn't it?
That'd be really nice. Yeah. I mean, he did get a couple of goals, didn't he, last season, and a couple of assists. So Leeds. So Leeds have released their full prices. The first 4 they released were Millier at 5, Cooper at 4.5, which I think set the tone for their defenders, all coming in at 4.5, which was interesting. Rafinha at 6.5, which I think personally has to be, it's almost criminal. I just cannot believe he's 6.5, and Bamford at 8. I mean, I just can't see why you would go for Bamford over Rafinha when Rafinha's 6.5. I mean, they were kind of evenly matched throughout the whole of last season. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. Honestly,
I totally agree. I totally agree. I think Rafinha is an absolute steal at 6.5, even with the fixtures not being that great. They're okay. They're not awful. They're okay. I think he's a great pick. That we saw last season that away from home Leeds were really good at scoring goals. All the creativity in that side comes through Rafinha. He's just an unbelievable talent. So at his price point, I think he's a bit of a no-brainer. But Bamford's interesting because at 8, I was really surprised to see him go up by quite as much as he has. I thought he might be, because I thought, I was looking at him towards the back end of last season. I think he was 6.6, and I was thinking, if he's 7.5, I could see it. The 8 was like, oh, like if he and Watkins had come in at the same, I probably would have been less surprised, I think.
Interesting. I thought he could be pushing 8.5.
Did you?
I did. I thought 8 was probably about right for him if Rafinha had been priced around the same.
Maybe that's why, actually. Maybe it's the fact if Rafinha was 7.5, I probably wouldn't have had an issue with Bamford being 8.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. I think that gives you a decision make between them. Yeah. When that comes in. I think Bamford at 8 is one thing. Rafinha at 6.5 just I think nullifies Bamford, at least for the start. I mean, you mentioned their fixture at the start. It's hard to know with Leeds because they do well against the big sides. But I mean, they've got United away in their first game, Everton at home, Burnley away. Not an amazing fixture. Then Liverpool at home, and then their first kind of good-looking game is Newcastle away. But even Newcastle at home aren't complete pushovers. So Rafinha could be one of those players who we all acknowledge is underpriced, all go for, kind of ignoring this fixture list. And actually, it might be worth not going for him just because everyone's going to have him, and maybe the big hauls aren't there. It's a kind of alternative view to that. I've got no doubt that Rafinha is going to massively do better than his 6.5 price tag, but I think his ownership is going to be so high. I think it could be 40-50% easy.
I think he could be the Werner of last season in terms of
harsh.
Not in terms of what happens to him, but in terms of the movement towards him.
Yeah.
In pre-season, it's all everyone talked about last season was owning Werner, and I think at the price that they've put Rafinha at, he will be another one of those this year for sure.
Yeah, I'm tempted to start with no Leads given that run and target other
What about Dallas? Because now Dallas is a midfielder.
Yep.
Not surprising. Absolutely expecting to see him move to midfield. 5.5, so ended the season at 5.5. To me, I don't mind the fact that he's a midfielder. I still think he's a decent option. All right, he doesn't have the additional 3 points that he could potentially get for a clean sheet. Still gets 1 as a midfielder, but you never really owned Dallas for clean sheets, did you?
No, And you saw against like City when he
Yeah.
gets getting a brace from a midfield spot. I think anyone that is capable of doing that consistently over a season in any position should be worth considering. I think it's a good price for him. I think 5.5. I think as well we're going to see a massive bandwagon for him because people are going to be looking at the midfield list, seeing him at 5.5 with that huge overall points that he got last season. And, sorry to use the word casual, but a lot of casual players are going to come in and they're going to see that and they're going to grab him. Again, fixtures aren't great. He's not going to get as many points, I wouldn't have thought, as he did last year. But I think he still is a decent option at 5.5. To me, he's an avoid, though. I'm just not completely convinced. I mean, he's going to drop. He would have dropped down about 30, 40 points, I think, from last season if you take away those clean sheets.
Yeah, which is true.
Yeah.
He's an interesting one, I think, for me. I still won't rule out owning him, even with that potential drop in points.
Just why? Assuming though, if you go for him, you're going to be doubling up with Rafinha, right?
Yeah, and I don't think I would do it for the first few weeks of the season, but it's something that when those Leeds fixtures start to change, I could see myself doing is ending up, rather than going for the double up with Bamford, is going for the double up with Dallas and Rafinha instead.
Yeah.
Like I could feel that coming. Just because both of them have such huge attacking potential that I think there's scope for it. I don't think there is in the opening weeks of the season, and I think if you're gonna go for a midfielder, you're gonna go with Rafinha. Yeah. But I wouldn't rule having the pair of them out later on.
No, nor would I. I think Dallas. I don't think Dallas's versatility, I think, has been a bit of a problem for him. But I do think he is. They had to make him a midfielder. He is a midfielder. Like he's not.
Yeah, 100%.
I think he's a midfielder who occasionally operates at right back or left back, not a left back or right back that sometimes plays in midfield. His position is definitely in that advanced role. But if they sign someone, to maybe share some minutes with him or something like that, might make him a bit of a solution. It's actually their defence though that I really like the look of. I mean, Melee at 5, I think that's a good price for him.
Yeah,
he was one of the high scoring keepers last season. Obviously a bit cheaper than Martinez, who we got the price for. But then the rest of their defenders priced at 4.5. I mean, if I'm thinking of 4.5 defenders, I don't think you can do any better than Leeds, given how good they were at the end of last season defensively. Eiling's there at 4.5, Llorente, Cooper. I think, okay, the fixture tough to start with, but I like them after they're done.
And that's the thing, I think, it's like I said at the beginning, there's enough 4.5 players in the game that are decent options. Mitchell, these boys at Leeds, and we've got some at Norwich as well, who I'm sure we'll talk about in a while. There's enough of them that makes you go, actually, I can build a decent squad of 4.5s that I'm not necessarily going to play all the time, but can come on and off the bench as I need them, and have a big whack of premiums in there as well. So I don't know. I think these Leeds defenders will be highly owned going into the season, not necessarily because you want to start them at the beginning, but because they're gonna make for good picks as we go through the season.
Yep, I agree. I guess the only kind of caveat is if you're playing on an early wild card, like a lot of people do, you could probably target some better fixtures maybe. But if you're thinking of long term wise, then yeah, definitely 4.5 Leeds defenders are bang on. Okay, let's move on to Man United. So high scoring player in the game. He came in at 12. So he's not the highest price.
No, I was really surprised by this.
Salah and Kane are both 12.5, right? So they're both higher than him. I thought Fernandes I thought he could be 13.
I am really surprised not to see him at least tie with Salah and Kane.
Yeah.
I thought they might just go pick.
Yeah.
There you go. Here's all three of them at 12.5. You can't have them all. Pick two of the three.
Kane's too expensive at 12.5. No, we'll get ahead of ourselves. We're not,
let's not talk about Kane
yet. We had loads of questions about Kane. We'll talk about it in a bit. Fernandes.
I'm really intrigued. The Bruno one, I think at 12, I just can't see you can't own Bruno. I know it's tough, but
look at the fixtures.
Exactly.
Leeds, Southampton, Wolves, Newcastle, West Ham.
I just think it'll be a real struggle to go into the season without Bruno Fernandes. You're just going to literally spend your life behind the sofa not wanting to know what's going on in the Man United games because he is such a raw talent, that man. He's one that, regardless of what that number said, even if it had said 13, I'd have found a way for him to be in my starting 15 for this season.
Yeah, I completely agree. Oh, my dog's barking, if you can hear him.
The other interesting one is obviously the defenders, because they've priced Harry and Luke Shaw and Wan-Bissaka all at 5.5, which seems like an absolutely fair thing to do. So it'll be a choice between those guys again. But I think you're going to want one.
Yep, absolutely. Sorry, my dog is still barking in the background. He hates it when the door goes. He's really not a fan of people arriving. Yeah, I mean, the other thing as well with United is just that rotation with Liverpool as well. So we talk about Salah and Bruno as being kind of absolute certs. You know, you got a perfect rotation almost for those first 5 games. So I just don't know why you would not. I mean, when Liverpool played Chelsea, for example, in game week 3, United have Wolves. Who knows what Wolves are gonna be like this season? So
for sure.
Yeah, I think those two. That's just 2 spots. Done. Don't overthink it.
I just don't think you can go without them. I think those 2, with the fixtures the way they've fallen in particular, that just makes it absolutely certain that you need to have them both.
Yep, agreed. So then Maguire's there at 5.5, Pogba's there at 7.5, Rashford's there at 9.5. Just looking at the full list that they released. So the one that really interested me here, I mean, Maguire coming in at 5.5, kind of expected. I really thought Shaw was going to be 6.
So did I.
So Shaw at 5.5 is very exciting.
Bargain. I think it's a bargain. I do. I think he's one that was on my list of players that I was really keen to know prices because I wanted them in my first picks. So Luke Shaw coming in at 5.5, I was expecting at least 6 for him. When I saw Robbo yesterday at 6.5, I thought, could they push Luke Shaw level with him? So the fact that he's a whole million cheaper, to me, that's just absolutely nailed him on in my team.
Robertson 6.5, you say?
Sorry, 7 he was. It's Van Dijk the 6.5.
Yeah, I was going to say 6.5 for Robertson. I was like, oh my God, I missed that. No,
it's Van Dijk.
Van Dijk 6.5, yeah. They just kept those the same.
Yeah, they held them, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's quite a few interesting ones here. I mean, the other interesting one is the goalkeeper situation. I think we're talking about Sanchez as being a lock, but I'm looking at De Gea and Henderson and thinking one of them's going to be first choice. Don't know who it's going to be.
Which one?
I think if we get a kind of a, if Ole at the start of the season says Henderson's going to be our number 1 goalkeeper in the Premier League, I would pay that 0.5 more.
Would you do it? Would you do the double up, though? Would you have Hendo and Shaw?
Good question. With those fixtures, possibly. Could be an option. I know United's defensive numbers aren't that bad, but I still don't trust them. In every game I watch of theirs, I still think sometimes they ride their luck. I don't trust Lindelof enough. Yeah. I think they really need to get a new centre back alongside Maguire. So yeah, that is a good point. Do you want to be paying that much money for defenders? I just think you're thinking about. For 0.5 more, I think the United goalkeeper will outscore Sanchez by enough over the course of weeks.
It's definitely interesting because I think for me, Luke Shaw was a no-brainer at that price because one, the fixtures look like there should be clean sheets, but also the attacking potential that he has. He was one of those players last season that even if the clean sheet went, you still most week got something additional on top for attacking returns. So I'm very happy to own him. I just kind of look at the defenders versus the goalkeeper and I think, if he says Hendo's the number 1, then it will be really tempting to double up and go with both of them. But I don't know. I kind of feel like there might be risk and reward benefits for going with a keeper from somewhere else just to cover yourself. Plus, also means that you don't use up all of your free United spots straight away. Because I can see that there will be somebody else, and there's other players with some quite nice value across the Manchester United side when you look at them further up the field and in midfield. So if one of them suddenly starts performing really well, there could be some nice options there too.
Yeah. I mean, the good thing about Sanchez, for example, is Brighton tend to keep below XG, which means they're mostly having shots outside the box or low quality shots. That means the save points rack up. We don't score that many goals. So teams, goalkeepers who make saves and don't, and teams don't score, they tend to do. That's why Pope's always done so well for Burnley over the years. So at United, it was the same with Mendy last season at Chelsea. I mean, he was 5. Everyone was really excited about it. He did okay, but he's never getting more than 6-7 points. Like 7's almost his kind of ceiling. Whereas someone like Sanchez, Pope, Martinez, that ceiling's always 13, 14, 15.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that's not the case for De Gea. Remember a few seasons ago when De Gea went absolutely crazy and he was like he made like 13 saves against Arsenal in one game or something. And
but it's not usual.
It's not usual, no. And I can't imagine it again. I do think that's an example of, I think, quite clever pricing. Just bring both the United goalkeepers down to 5. That puts them in the conversation again. Yeah, I think it's quite an interesting one. A few people in the chat. So Lynn says Shaw's locked in. So she's a big Shaw fan. I think he's going to be there in a lot of teams. So yeah, completely get that. Flying Dutchman agrees about the goalkeepers. He likes to look at them at 5. Martin Boyle says Trent and Shaw both locked in. Jack Jones says after watching Shaw against Scotland, he would have been overpriced at 1 million. I completely agree, and I think you could say that about all of our players.
Say that about Harry Kane.
So definitely say that about Harry Kane. 4.5 bench option, I think, based on that. That was a terrible performance. Unofficial Tribe likes Cavani. So Cavani 8.5. I
have trouble with this one.
So do I.
It's just a bit expensive in my view.
He won't play enough.
For a player that doesn't play, every game, and of course, that's not going to change this season. Still going to be a rotation risk. So it's a no from me on Cavani.
No, I mean,
if he'd have been 6, I'd have been tempted. But
yeah, I know. I mean, these forward spots are so precious, and I think this season this is going to be the season of the mid-price striker. Bamford, Watkins, Calvert-Lewin, Tony. There's just good options for under 9 million. And I just don't know why you'd use one of those on Cavani. I mean, Martial's back. Martial's not just suddenly not going to play. He was number 1 striker for a year and a half. Greenwood's there at 7.5. He plays up front sometimes. He plays on the right. Sancho's going to come in. Does that mean Greenwood's going to play even more centrally as well? I'd assume probably he will.
Yeah.
Rashford's there. Cavani's getting older and older and older. I think his influence is going to be much more in the dressing room and things as the years go on. Yeah. I don't think he's an FPL option personally, but yeah, I mean Lingard's there at 7. I'd be interested to know what happens to Lingard if he does go to West Ham at 7 million. I think he's a great pick.
I agree. I like Lingard at 7. It's not horrendous, is it? Like paying 7 for Lingard, I'd be happy to pay that if he continues to play in the way he did in the back end of last season. The big question is, where is he going to be? I suspect we might see him back at West Ham, and if we do, then Lingard becomes an option for sure.
Yep. Absolutely. All right, Norwich. So the Pookie party begins when the season starts. He's had a price drop down to 6. Yeah. He was 6.5 last season. He was in the Prem, down to 6. Krul's there at 4.5. So again, they're defenders and stuff. I don't think there's huge amount. We have had their full price list. I think. How about this for a name to pronounce? Andrew Omabamidele. Is that right? He's 4 million. From what I've read, he's fairly likely to start as well. So he could be our 4 million defender that we cry out for every season. The stats about Norwich are that they aren't as bad as they were when they came up last time in terms of defensive. Yeah. They've kind of sorted things out. Grant Hanley's a man reborn. He was great against England. Had a great season at Norwich again. So, I think, again, when they last came up to the Premier League, do you remember all the injuries they had? They were they were playing with like disaster. 3 right backs in one game. I think when they beat Man City, they had like 3 of their first choice back 4 out or something like that. So yeah, I mean, they could be an option. The fixtures aren't great for Norwich. I don't think they're bottom of the ticker. Liverpool, Man City, Leicester, Arsenal. Their first 4 games.
It is awful.
Absolutely dreadful. So I like Pookie at 6, but no chance.
Like Cantwell at 5.5 as well. I think Cantwell at 5.5 could be a really nice option. You just got to get through those first few weeks. And if you get through those first few game weeks, then you could have a really nice player in your hands. So again, it goes back to what you were saying earlier, doesn't it? It depends when you're planning to wildcard. So I don't like to wildcard early. I like to hold it. So I can see myself starting the season with a Norwich player who never makes it off the bench for a few weeks, just in order that they're there and they're ready for when those fixtures change. Because of course the benefit of having a terrible start is that you then do get a nice period afterwards. So I think Cantwell for me would be the one that I'll be looking at.
Yeah, and we might see some price drops as well. Pookie, for example, he could be 5.8 by the time Watford roll up, although they rolled to Watford in game week 5. So I think they're one to kind of avoid for now. But yeah, I do think we could see some Norwich assets emerge. Be interesting. I mean, I think they've got a real point to prove after going down without a fight, selling Buendia, obviously still not trusted. So yeah, it'd be interesting to know kind of what happens there. Yeah. Since you mentioned Cantwell, just quickly at 5.5, it's like I've always been a bit worried about the 5-5 bracket because I always feel like there's not really many players to move to. So if you start with Cantwell, who do you go to? But actually, this year it feels like there are
There's a
actually some
lot.
5-5 options as well.
Yeah, there are.
So and
There
actually
are.
looking at 6 million, 665, there's no one that's really exciting me so far. So I think 5-5 could actually be quite a good price this year to invest in.
Yeah, and last season I decided to have a really cheap fourth and fifth midfielder. So I had a 5-5 and then Basuma at 4-5. And actually that worked really well because it meant I had 3 really big hitting midfielders alongside. And I think that's something, the way that the season's panning out so far with these releases, that's something I could see myself doing again this year for sure.
Absolutely. Yep. Liverpool. So we had the full price list from Liverpool. The ones they started with: Trent at 7.5, Salah at 12.5, Robertson at 7, Jota 7.5. I was really surprised at that one. Wasn't surprised at any others so much, but Jota at 7.5, he's going to be a lock, I would assume, in a lot of teams as well. Another kind of template pick, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think he will be a popular option that lots of people will kind of look to own. I really liked him, and I think at the price he is, there's enough scope that you could double up on that Liverpool midfield if you wanted to with Jota and Salah. He's not overpriced, and that was my concern, is that he could go in at a really ridiculous price, but he hasn't. So yeah, quite pleased to see him at the price that he is. Salah, I like the idea of Salah at 12.5.
Yeah, I think Jota is becoming. I've always had that bit of a worry where I don't really know where he fits into the team, but I think with Firmino kind of just not even being as effective as he has been, he's been such a key part of that team for so many years, but I sense his influence is dropping a bit, and they need to look to someone who just offers a bit more threat. I don't think they can just keep working with, if it works when Mane and Salah are completely on song and Firmino can sort of drop deep and carry them a little bit, but when they're off form, they just lack that edge, and Jota gives them that. So I expect to see him play a lot more next season as well. So yeah, I really do like the look of him. I mean, I guess the big debate here is, I mean, there's no debate. I don't think we need to mention Salah and Mane at 12.5, 12. There's no debate. There's just no conversation to be had. I think that's. No. I was really annoyed with that pricing. I think they could have made Mane 11.
I was expecting them to make Mane 11. Yeah. I wouldn't have been shocked if they'd have made him 10.5.
Nor was I. That's what I said on Twitter earlier. Yeah. Nor would I.
But yeah, I think at 12, it's just I mean, he's the same price as Bruno. Like well, nearly. It baffles me. It really does. I'm kind of like, I don't. Yeah, you're just not going to own Mane, are you? Like it's insane.
No. So the unofficial tribe says what price we put him in for. I'd have put him in for 11. Like. And to me, that might have been a bit overpriced. I mean, Son's 10.
Yeah, I'd have put him at 7. I think he deserves to be. Well, I personally think that on the seasons they had last year, I wouldn't have been surprised if Son was more than him.
No.
So if they'd have both been 10, I'd have gone, okay, fair enough. But anything more than 10, I just don't think Mane's a thing.
Yeah. I think at least I think if there's like 10.5. Let's say kind of 10.5. Like, I think that gives you the choice of, do I double up with these two, because it doesn't completely restrict you, but 12 is too much. Anyway, we said we weren't going to talk about it, but we've ended up talking about it. I mean, it's important. It's an important conversation, I think. But I just think people who are going to be, I just can't. I don't know what his ownership's going to be. I mean, John Chappelle says it's a great price. He'll be low owned and a good differential captain. Yeah, good luck with that.
You'll regret not owning Salah.
Yeah, good luck with that when you go for him over Salah and Salah banks in a hat trick. It's the pens, isn't it? It's the penalties for 0.5 more to have penalties. It's a no-brainer for me. Let's talk about defence though. So we saw it last season. We could probably just find a soundbite from last season where we talked about Trent, Robertson, and Van Dijk. Who are you going to pay the extra money for Trent?
I don't know.
Ooh,
actually.
Interesting.
So Lee and I had this conversation last night, and he was like, you just pay the extra money for Trent. And I was like, I don't know if you do. I think that I saw enough from Robertson last season and in the Euros, actually, that's made me kind of go, maybe I might go with Robbo. I know that, we've obviously also got an injury to Trent, which looks like it's going to be totally fine for the start of the season. But I don't know. I'm really keen to go with Robertson. I also think that Van Dijk at 6.5 could be a really nice pick as well. So I don't know. I think you can save a bit of money not having Trent. Last season I was very much in that you have to own Trent camp. But
Yep.
this year, I think that there's flexibility. If you need that extra 0.5 for something else, I think Robbo is a good pick.
I completely agree with you. Sorry, Lee. This is why Sam and I are dating now. But yeah, I think you're right. I think last season when it happened, it was like, well, obviously Trent's worth that 0.5. He's got the free kicks, he's got the corners and stuff. But you just saw time and time again that Robertson was able to match him. The fact Robertson's taking corners on that side now, he plays so advanced as well up the pitch. He's almost become a full-on wing back now, even for Liverpool, when they don't play it. So I don't think there's much difference in terms of like the heat maps for them, the threat they've got. I mean, Trent's always got that ability to bang in a free kick, but you can't rely on those like consistently. And I think the injury as well, I think is really interesting. I don't know whether he's interested to know whether he's going to be fully fit at the start of the season, whereas Robertson just seems to keep getting better and better every time I see him play. So I think beginning of last season I'd have been like, yeah, definitely worth it. This season, I think if you need to save 0.5, I think Trent would be the one I'd pick if budget was no, worry. But if I needed 0.5, I'd go for it. Gabriel says, what about the double up?
See, I have issues with the double up slightly, in only that I don't know whether you want to go double up at the defence or double up in midfield. So I think the beginning of the season will kind of let us know whether it's that you want to own Salah and Jota and then a defender, or whether you want to own Robbo and Trent and Salah. Like for me, at this point, I'm not sure. I think that the treble up on Liverpool with the fixtures the way they are is definitely there. I just question whether it's defensively or in attack.
That's a good point.
That would be.
Yeah, Norwich, Burnley, Chelsea, Leeds, Palace. So, yeah, I mean, Chelsea, Leeds, obviously tough from a defensive point of view and an attacking point of view. But Norwich, Burnley, Palace, I think it's the thing. I mean, the thing is, if you do go for the defensive double up, you're basically getting attackers anyway because of how high up the pitch Trent and Robertson play. The issue with that though is it's difficult to switch over to Jota if he does start the season really strongly. It is a really tricky one. I think given the fixtures, I favour Salah and Jota, and then one of Trent and Robertson. But I think I would just favour going with the two. I could easily see why you go the flip of that. Yeah. Right, we're getting through these now. Spurs, your boys.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. There's teams so good they've even got Højbjerg on the list in their initial four they put on because everyone's going to be going
you say
there.
that, and actually when Lee and I were talking about this last night, I was like, why have they put Højbjerg on there? And then I looked at the Euro stats, and Højbjerg is the player who's made the most assists this season.
Is he?
In the Euros, he's the one that's put in a ridiculous stat. So I was like, maybe that's why. Maybe they're actually going to play him in a more attacking. I think the trouble I have with Spurs is
how long we got?
Right, have we got 3 hours? But the trouble I have with Spurs is the ongoing saga of the manager, because until you know who the manager is, it's very, very difficult to know what's going to happen moving forward. I think at 12.5, Kane, in my view, you own him, because if he's 12.5,
oh, interesting.
I thought he'd be 13. I really did honestly think that he would be 13 million. I think the way that he was last season, I'd have paid 13 for him, regardless of whether he's at Spurs or not. And I think that's the thing is you have to talk about Kane in a neutral way, because we just don't know where he's going to be playing next season is the reality. 12.5 I'll pay for him. The big question I have is Son, because at 10 you're suddenly in a conversation with those really big premium assets that we were talking about before. And how do you afford? I mean, we've already said you're going to go Bruno and you're going to go Salah. If you add Kane to that as well, you're at a point where then you're like, okay, well, I've spent like way over a third of my budget on 3 players. If I add Son to that as well,
you can't do it.
You can't do it because you've got to fill up the rest of your side. So you've got to make a choice between those 2 Spurs players. I think the reality is that most people will go Kane because of the potential move away that will give him the opportunity maybe to be starting in a City lineup, which...
Oh, I can feel the pain and hurt as you say that.
Well, City lineup on game 1 against Spurs at the Spurs Stadium, which, I mean... you
You
can't
can't write it, can you? I know.
But I think for me of the two, you're not going to own both, so you're going to go Kane. I think is the way I see it.
So I think the complete opposite.
Do you? You're going to go Son?
Well, I don't know if I'll go either. Spurs
The
don't.
fixtures aren't great, by the way.
So honestly, Spurs don't interest me at all. I think they were.
I'm not surprised.
They were so bad under Mourinho. They were not that great under Mason. I think Kane at 12.5. That's a City striker price.
Well, he might be.
Yeah, he might be. I don't think City are going to stump up 100+ million for him. I think he'll probably stay. I don't think anyone's going to pay that much money at the moment. I think maybe it happens next year.
I think I do want to date you now.
Saying all the right things. But yeah, I just think a 12.5 million striker at Spurs. Given, I mean, the fixture you mentioned the fixtures they've got. They got Man City in that first game, Wolves, Watford, Palace, Chelsea. I mean, to be honest, Wolves, Watford, Palace aren't bad at all. I mean, you're going to have a promoted team and two teams with new managers, but they have also got City and Chelsea in there as well. I just don't know what Spurs are going to be like. I don't know who's going to come in. I mean, when you're linked to Gattuso to come, I mean, your two options so far have been the manager that Mourinho replaced or Gattuso. I mean. Who are you going to end up with? It's unbelievable what's going on at Spurs at the moment. I don't know. I literally don't know what's happening.
You and me both. I can't tell you, but what I do know is, and so here's why I'm going to go Kane. I think that early on in the season, because of the way that I play my game, because I like to hold my wild card to get a bit of an understanding of how teams start, and because I like to give myself some breathing space and some thinking space and see how runs of fixtures change. For me, owning Kane, if it goes badly, he's an easy swap to everyone else in the game. But if Kane gets a move and bangs, or doesn't get a move and still bangs, to get to him is really hard. And it will basically mean a change in strategy. So my plan is to start the season with him, knowing that there's always a get out, an easy get out for anywhere you want to go. And the guys in the chat are talking about how the Everton prices are out, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and you think, that's what, 4.5 million less. So there's always opportunities with having the highest owned striker. So if you can afford to work that you've got the rest of the premiums that you want, the rest of your team doesn't feel too compromised, then I think it's worth owning him.
Yeah, I really, really like Son. I think Son and Kane, we saw kind of, I think there's 2.5 million difference in between Son and Kane, and the fact that I actually like the forward options in Calvert-Lewin, Toney, Watkins. I think there's good forward options there, whereas midfield I think is a little bit more restrictive maybe. So I think if I'm going for one, I'm going for Son. I'm just not convinced Kane at 12.5. I mean, I just think he had such an amazing run towards the start of the season, and then wasn't that amazing towards the back end. There was a lot of Spurs were massively in flux, but Spurs are massively in flux now.
It's going to be fine though. I'm going to send Spurs my CV. And you'll see me in the dugout from August.
Be better than Gattuso.
I mean that's it. I'm not. I think that's what my next job's going to be. I'm going to manage Spurs. But I mean, look, I don't know, but all I do know is that I like to put some premiums in every price position. And I'm looking at the premiums that have been announced in that forward line, and I'm thinking, well, I don't want to go Aubameyang, but I do. The way that Kane played the whole of last season means that I want to start the season with him.
Yep. Well, I'm going to start with neither, and it'll ruin my season again because you'll probably win 8-0 in the second game for no reason, and then do nothing. Yes, it's typical. Yeah, it's interesting. The price points thing is definitely a good one. I think it's important to make sure. I think it's the most important thing you do when you create your team is make sure you hit those certain levels of prices so that you can make those moves easier. So maybe worth it. Just 12.5, not for me. Let's talk about Everton quickly because obviously we've just had those. This had those land. So we've had Calvert-Lewin coming in at 8.
Nice price, I think.
Yep, I thought it was going to be 8, and it is. Yeah. I think that's a good price for him. James Rodriguez in at 7. Richarlison's. Yep. James Rodriguez. I mean, amazing start to the season, and then nothing for ages. Yeah. I wonder.
New manager might affect him though.
Yeah,
let's see.
I don't know in a good way. I mean, him and Ancelotti were like best mates, weren't they?
Exactly.
So
Exactly. And that does concern me a little bit because I do feel like he was one of the players that was definitely playing for the manager.
absolutely, yeah.
And now without the manager there, how is that going to go?
And is he
Not sure.
fit? Can you ever really trust him? Yeah, but 7 million is. I mean, that's a drop from last year. He was 7.5, wasn't he? So, we can see. We all know what he's capable of. He's a great player. Richarlison is a forward again at 7.5. I think he was 8 last year. He dropped down 0.5.
Yeah, I think he has. Yeah.
But the big one, Luca Dean at 5.5.
That's nice.
It's not just nice. Have you seen the? It's not just nice. It's insane. I mean, their fixtures: Southampton at home, Leeds, Brighton, Burnley, Villa.
Yeah.
Done.
I mean, I think he could be a really, really nice pick. The Everton prices actually seem to be offering a lot of value. There's a lot of value in there. And you don't. The good thing about them is you don't have to own them for a long period of time. You just have to own them for that nice period of time at the beginning of the season, and at the back end of that nice period of time. That's probably about the sort of time that some managers will be looking to wildcard, and then it's perfect for moving them on if their form drops off afterwards. But you see them sitting up there at the top of the fixture ticker, and you think, why on earth would you not have a defender and a forward? And the way they've priced them, you can easily have the best forward and the best defender in Dean and DCL.
They're the only two options I was considering, even before the prices, Dean and Calvert-Lewin. I think, when Scout have got a difficult job of really trying to sell Everton assets and, top of the fixture ticker, here's all the players you can get when really it's 2 lines. Just get Dean and Calvert-Lewin, 1 line, there you go. So, yeah, I think they're straight in my basket, those 2 players. For sure, I think that's. I'm really surprised they've brought Dean down to 5.5. He's not a 5.5 defender. He's a 6.
Yeah, but equally, I would have been surprised if he'd have been more than Luke Shaw, for example. So they kind of are. They're being consistent with these picks.
Yeah, but I'm surprised Shaw wasn't 6.
Well, I agree with you. I would have, if the Manchester United boys and Dean, if they'd have all been at 6, I'd have been like, well, that seems reasonable.
Yeah.
So
with Maguire at 5.5. I thought Shaw would be 6 and Dean as well. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, the prices this year are quite surprising. Normally there's a couple that I'm kind of like, oh, I don't know about that, but this year it does seem a lot of which I'm like, wow, some of these are a bit strange.
Yeah.
So we've got 2 more. We're getting there, Sam. West Ham are next. So Antonio 7.5, Souček's up to 6. So not a massive jump for him. Creswell 5.5, I think that's fair enough. Soufal 5. I think they're fair enough. I think Souček maybe could have been 6.5, but
I'm very, very happy with the defensive picks there. I think both Creswell and Kufel, depending upon your budget, both of them look like really nice options. I'll be trying my hardest to have Creswell 5.5. I think he looks like a really, really good pick.
So that's clever pricing to me. That's how pricing should be. You've got Creswell's obviously the better pick. You make him 0.5 more than Soufal, because Soufal is still a good pick, but if they're both the same price, everyone's picking Creswell. So you just add in that little bit of variety. That's why the Maguire Shaw thing's a bit odd. It's why the Mane Salah thing is a bit off, because it's not giving you enough of a decision to make. But this really does. I really like Soufal at 5.
What's really interesting, I think, and I was saying last night, with West Ham, we obviously also have to consider European football this year.
Yeah, we do.
Not a huge squad, so we're not going to necessarily have the ability to have huge rotation around European football, and they're going to want to have a good season in Europe. So can Antonio physically cope with 2 games in a week? Let's see. He seems to be made of glass at some stages, so let's see. But I think defensively, you're fairly safe with players like Creswell. So there's some really nice prices there. It's just how many West Ham do you want to go with, given the European element that they've now got to their game? If they do Wolves, we could have problems.
Absolutely. And I think given Antonio's fitness record, I think the answer to your question is no. He absolutely can't handle to playing 2 games a week. He's the only striker they've got at the moment. They can move Bowen up to that role, but they're going to have to sign a striker. I mean, this is the thing this year. Yeah. Everyone needs a striker. Brighton needs a striker. Chelsea needs a striker. City need a striker. West Ham need a striker. I think West Ham moving for someone like Tammy Abraham would be a great move for them, because that would fix a lot of problems. I think 30 could he get him for 30 million, 35 million, something like that.
Yeah.
And then I think that makes Antonio a bit less attractive. You don't really know who he's going to play, but I imagine Antonio will play the Prem and not play in Europe. Would be my guess. There's no way he can play both.
He can't play twice in a week.
No way.
He'll break. He'll break quickly, and then they'll have a real problem.
Yeah. But Souček there at 6, I think is going to entice quite a few people as well. I think I said about there being quite a few options at 6 million. I think Souček's one that I'm looking at.
And as we said earlier, if Lingard ends up coming back, he's going to slot in nicely between Antonio and Souček. So I think he's a really nice pick.
Decisions to make. Yep. So we have had the full list. So Fabianski is there at 5. Ogbonna Dawson at 5. So there's, again, you're going to get Soufal at 5 over them for sure. And then the likes of Bowen's there at 6-5. So not many things. I mean, Ben Rama's someone that interests me at 6. If they don't sign Lingard, maybe we're going to see more minutes from him. He looks good when I see him play.
He did, yeah. Back end of the season, he was good.
Yeah. I just wonder if he's going to be reliable enough. Yarmolenko as well at 5-5. I mean, he's a different player for the Ukraine than he is for West Ham.
For sure.
Yeah, I wonder if they'll try and unlock him this season, or whether he might get a move. I imagine off the back end of what he's been doing for the Ukraine. But yeah, West Ham are. I think the Europe thing is definitely a big factor. I will be waiting to see on them what their fixtures are. I can't even remember.
It's being a bit quietly cautious, I think, with West Ham, isn't it, going into this one? Because, we thought that Wolves would be able to cope on both fronts, and they just didn't.
Absolutely.
So let's see whether West Ham can do it. Better job of it.
And they've got a lot of options in midfield, I think, but not, like I said, not with Antonio. He's the only one. Their fixtures are decent. I mean, Newcastle away, Leicester, Palace, Southampton United. I'm not expecting huge amounts of goals in these, but I think definitely defensively. I think Soufal is a solid pick to start. I don't think I'll start with Antonio. Right, so the last team. So we've got Villa. So top scoring keeper Martinez at 5-5. Grealish at 8. Really interesting. Watford at 7-5. And then pretty much all the defenders coming in at 5. Let's start with Grealish. Grealish at 8. What do you reckon? Does he stay? And would you, if he goes to City, would you have him at 8 at City, or would you have him at 8 at Villa? What do you reckon?
What a question. Do I think
just a small question,
Yeah. Do I think he's going to stay? No, I don't think I do. I think he's going to go. But I would prefer him at 8, where he is, I think, than I would at City. That City midfield is it's just a nightmare, isn't it? Picking players that are going to consistently start and get enough minutes. Whereas I think, with Grealish at Aston Villa, if you spend 8 million on him, he's going to start week in, week out, as long as he's fit. So I have some slight concerns there. Watkins, I really like at that price point. I don't think that's too expensive. But you are talking about quite a lot of money that you could potentially be investing in Aston Villa here.
Yeah, which is not as ridiculous as it sounds, I think. I mean, the fixtures they've got are really nice. Watford, Newcastle, Brentford. So 2 home games in the first 3 against Newcastle and Brentford, and Watford away, and then Chelsea and Everton. There is absolutely no way that I'm not going to start with Watkins. Oh no,
I think Watkins is going to be a lock for most people. Yeah. We're just going to go Watkins, done.
Absolutely.
And then the question is, do you support Watkins with another Villa player? And if you do, how do you do it? Do you go with the set and forget on Martinez again this season, which at 5.5 I think is doable? I think you could go there. Do you go with one of the defenders, or do you try and go with one of the other midfielders? Do you go Grealish? Do you go Buendia?
Oh, well, Buendia. We've had Buendia's price. Buendia is 6-5. So 1-5 less than Grealish. I love Grealish. I love him. I know England fans love Grealish in general, and it was amazing when he came against Scotland, the cheers of going up in the pub I was in and all that. I think Grealish is absolutely amazing. But Buendia didn't do it at Norwich in the Premier League at all. But you only have to look at his numbers in the Championship last season to see this is a hell of a creative player. They've got a hell of a player here. Paying 35 million for him. I think Grealish will stay. Again, I just don't think teams are going to have enough money to prize him away.
City can't buy.
They can't buy Kane and Grealish.
They can't buy Grealish and Kane.
No.
They can't buy both. So they've got a straight choice to make as to what they want to do, if they want to do either of those things. My personal view is that they don't need Grealish. They've got enough really talented people in that mid that they don't need him, but they do need a forward. Whether they need Kane is another matter entirely. They just need a forward, I think, because they can play without a forward, as we've seen for large chunks of last season. My view on Villa is I'm going to have Watkins 100%. I do really fancy going with Buendia. I look at him at that price and I think that is a really, really nice price point that you've come in at. You're clearly talented. You're going to be playing with, sorry, Norwich fans, but better quality in Aston Villa. You know, people that are Premier League, they've done it now. They're consistently performing in the Premier League, and last season were really, really good Aston Villa. So I suspect that we might have a good season from Buendia at Aston Villa. So I am definitely keeping my eyes closely on him and what happens with Villa in pre-season.
Yeah, me too. And it's going to be really interesting to know how they use him, because I think the problem with Buendia before has been his tracking back. And I think that's why he never really had the trust of the manager when he was in the Premier League. Yeah. Drops down to the Championship. I think it was seen as less important. He's given the license to create and do what he wants. And then I think he's sold because, again, I don't think he just didn't have that trust. So at Villa, I can't see his role changing and him suddenly being this guy who's given defensive responsibilities. I think he's going to be the one playing really, really far up the pitch, making things happen for Watkins and Grealish. So I think 6-5 is a steal for him at Villa.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think if you go for him, you don't go for Grealish. But I think that could make Grealish, in a way, even more attractive, because I think less people are going to go for him and probably flock towards Villa to Buendia because he's cheaper.
He could be a really nice differential, couldn't he, this season, Grealish, which is not something that you normally say about him, but he could be a really nice differential pick. The bigger question, I think, with Villa is, are you going with the defence? Because obviously last season they were go-tos. People were at least invested in Martinez, but lots of people invested in the double up, having Martinez and then either Mings or Konza or whoever it was in defence. And I guess it's tougher because, you look at we've already talked, there's so much value across the defence in terms of, the picks at Manchester United. We've seen a load of nice, cheap 4.5 options. So it's going to be hard to go with a Villa defender, I think, when you've got so many other options around. Yeah,
I don't think I will. Again, I don't. The great thing about Martinez was it didn't seem to matter half the time if they conceded. He just gets so many saves, bonus, whatever. Their defence doesn't. I still think they're a bit suspect. I'm looking at those for 5 and thinking for 0.5 more, and when I can get Shaw and Dean, Trent, Shaw, Dean, and then a couple of 4.5s, or even 1.45 and the 4 million from Norwich. I think that's probably me. That's probably me sorted. Yeah,
for sure.
FM Wonder Kid says that he loves me, but sort my framing out. I need to rearrange my wall picks. What's wrong with my framing? If it looks a bit,
they're not in the middle.
What do you mean they're not in the middle? Well, it's just where my camera is, to be honest.
No, you're in the middle, but your pictures on the wall aren't. So we just need to move them.
What do you think? Yeah, so it looks a bit. They look a bit off balance as well. But that's my camera. It's because I'm on a little stand thing.
You know what? Just move house, Az. Just move house.
Well, I am. My house is sold now, so I will be moving house soon.
There you go. So when you get your new house, you can just set yourself up.
What? So they should be central behind me. Yeah, I suppose. So the thing is that they're getting added to. So I've got Martinez coming in the post. He'd be my next decision. So then he'll be over here. Well, can't do it here. No, there. So then it'll be a bit more central. But yeah, anyway. Was that really the only question we had? Wasn't even a question. Just sort my framing out. My dating life and my picture arrangement have been quite key things.
You're popular today. They want to know all about you, Az.
No, don't they? I should do a Q&A just devoted to myself. I don't want to do that. Anyway, that's enough of that. Sam, thanks for joining me. We've covered all the teams now. I'm sure there'll be more teams that come out soon. And we'll be back later this afternoon. I mean, we've done a lot longer than I thought we would. Maybe we'll do another one a bit later on. 700 people watching, so quite a few people here. I think it'll be maybe Chris and I will do it later, and you can have an excuse and you can do the school run and stuff. Because we meant to be coming back at 2, weren't we? But that feels quite soon after this.
Yeah, it does.
Anyway, we'll see. Just a shout out to the Fantasy Scout members area. So obviously we're starting to think about FPL a lot now. The Euros is still going on. So this is a good opportunity to get signed up to the site. We've got a new members area revamp coming very soon as well. It's going to be, you're going to be able to compare 3 players. You're going to have loads more sort of enhanced stuff. You've got things like rate my team. You've got expected goals, expected assists, season ticker, members articles, all of this great stuff. So make sure you sign up. You can get a 7-day free trial as well. So do that. But until the next video, thanks everyone for watching,